It was one of those raw November afternoons when the wind feels like it's trying to cut through your bones. Rain slammed against the cracked windows of the bus stop, and a skinny kid named Caleb Foster stood there clutching a beat-up backpack and counting out coins in his pocket. 12 years old, hoodie, too thin shoes, held together with duct tape. He was used to tough days. But that night would change everything, because that was the night he met her. Caleb noticed her before anyone else did. She stood in the middle of the sidewalk, rain soaking through her expensive wool coat, her silver hair plastered to her face. She didn't move, didn't flinch at the storm, just stared around like a lost child. People streamed past her umbrellas, up shoulders hunched, like she wasn't even there. Caleb's mom had taught him better than that. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked gently, stepping closer. The woman blinked at him, her blue eyes glassy with fear. I don't know. I can't remember." Her voice shook. Caleb spotted a gold chain around her neck with a pendant engraved with an address, 178 Rose Hill Lane. He knew that street. It was way across town in a neighborhood where houses looked like something out of a magazine. Caleb glanced at the few coins in his pocket. Enough for 2 bus fares barely. That meant walking to school for the next 2 days. But leaving her here wasn't an option. "Come on, ma'am," he said softly, taking her arm like he'd seen his mom do with elderly patients. "Let's get you home." The bus ride was long and jerky, rain hammering against the windows. The woman, her name was Margaret. She'd remembered that much, rested her head on the glass, while Caleb watched her closely. Other passengers stared, but Caleb ignored them. He wasn't there for their approval. When they finally reached Rose Hill, Margaret's house looked like a palace. A housekeeper rushed out, panic etched across her face. "Mrs. Whitaker, we've been searching for you." "Oh, Lord." She spotted Caleb soaked to the bone, clutching his backpack. "Did you bring her home?" "Yes, ma'am," Caleb mumbled. "Wait here. I'll get you some cash," the woman said, digging through her purse. But Caleb shook his head, backing away. "It's fine. I just wanted her safe." And before she could protest, he turned and walked back out into the storm. 5 miles. That's how far home was. Each step was a battle as icy water seeped into his duct-taped sneakers. Streetlights flickered over broken sidewalks. He passed boarded-up stores, puddles deep enough to soak his jeans, men huddled under awnings staring at him with tired eyes. By the time he reached his apartment, it was almost 11. His mother, Lena, stood in the doorway of their cramped 2 bedrooms, still in her nurse scrubs, her face a mix of terror and fury. "Caleb Foster." "Where have you been, Mom? I can explain. You better start talking right now." Caleb's voice trembled as he told her everything: the lost lady, the bus ride, the walk home. Lena's anger softened as she noticed his soaked clothes, his chattering teeth, the raw honesty in his voice. She pulled him into a hug, whispering, "You scared me half to death, baby, but I'm proud of you." That night, Caleb curled up in bed with a fever already brewing. By morning, it had spiked to 102. By evening, 103. Lena sat by his side, tears running down her face as she dabbed his forehead. She'd missed her shift at the hospital to care for him, and by the next day, she'd been fired. No income, no insurance, and her boy was getting worse. By Thursday, Caleb's cough was wet and ragged. Lena wrapped him in a blanket and drove to the hospital she'd given 8 years of her life to. She parked in the employee lot out of habit, then froze, realizing she wasn't staff anymore. Her hands shook as she carried him inside. "Please," she begged a friend, a fellow nurse named Rosa. "Just take a look at him. He's so sick, Rosa. Please." Rosa glanced around nervously, then led them into an exam room. "He's burning up," she whispered after checking his vitals. "This is bad, Lena." Before Rosa could start an IV, the door burst open. Jennifer Blake, the new nursing supervisor, stood there with 2 security guards. "What the hell is going on?" she barked. "He's got pneumonia," Lena said, standing between Jennifer and the bed. "We just need—" "You don't work here anymore. You don't get free treatment." Jennifer's eyes were cold, her tone sharp enough to slice through steel. "Security. Get them out." Caleb's eyes fluttered open, terrified. "Mom, what's happening?" Lena's stomach twisted. She wrapped him in the blanket, whispering, "It's okay, baby. I've got you," as she carried him past stares from former co-workers. Nobody spoke up. Nobody stopped them. By the time they reached their beat-up sedan, Lena was shaking with rage and helplessness. She sat behind the wheelhead in her hands, rain pounding on the roof. That's when a sleek black car pulled up beside hers. A driver stepped out and opened the door for a woman in a cashmere coat. It was Margaret. She tapped on Lena's window, her voice calm but firm. "Are you Caleb's mother?" Lena's breath caught. Yes. How do you—" "Because your son saved my life." Margaret's expression softened as she glanced at Caleb, pale and shivering in the passenger seat. "What's wrong with him?" "Pneumonia," Lena whispered. We can't afford." Margaret didn't let her finish. "Stay here." And with that, she strode toward the hospital entrance. 10 minutes later, Jennifer Blake returned to the parking lot, pale and trembling, flanked by security. Margaret was right behind her, radiating the kind of authority that made everyone step aside. "Bring the boy in," Margaret ordered. "Ma'am, there are policies," Jennifer started. "Policies?" Margaret's voice cracked like a whip. "This is my hospital." Jennifer swallowed hard. I didn't realize—" "You're done here," Margaret snapped. "Security escort her out." That was the moment Lena realized who Margaret Whitaker really was, the owner of the hospital, one of the most powerful women in the city. And she was furious. Within an hour, Caleb was settled in a private suite bigger than their entire apartment. Dr. Louis Chen, the head of pediatrics, personally oversaw his treatment. Lena sat by his side, still stunned. Margaret visited that night, slipping into the chair beside her. "You know," Margaret said softly, "I have early-stage Alzheimer's. Some days I'm fine. Some days I wander. That day I fired my driver because I thought I could handle things. I almost didn't make it home. But your boy—" Her voice broke. "He didn't hesitate. He saw a scared old woman, and he helped me. No questions, no reward." Lena wiped her eyes. "He's got his father's heart. His dad used to say, family isn't just blood, it's who shows up for you." Margaret smiled through tears. "That makes us family now." Over the next few days, Caleb improved. Jennifer Blake was fired and Rosa was promoted to fill her role. Margaret offered Lena a new position, director of nursing, with better pay and the power to ensure no child was ever turned away from emergency care. Lena said yes with tears in her eyes. 3 months later, the Whitaker mansion was packed with guests. Lena and Caleb walked through its doors, as honored guests this time. Margaret stood before Boston's elite, her voice steady, as she told the story of the boy who changed her life. "Compassion," she said, "isn't about money or status. It's about a child who gave up his bus fare to help a stranger. That's why I'm founding the Caleb Foster Scholarship Fund, to honor kindness in action." Caleb's cheeks flushed as applause filled the room. He'd never liked being in the spotlight, but Margaret knelt beside him, whispering, "You deserve this." The story spread like wildfire. News outlets called him the boy who saved a stranger. Videos went viral, inspiring coat drives, food donations, acts of kindness across the country. Caleb even got a letter from a girl in Chicago who stood up to bullies because of him. "You made me brave," she'd written. 2 years later, Caleb stood at a podium in the hospital auditorium, taller now, more confident, wearing a silver pendant Margaret had given him. It says, "Service above self," he told the crowd of doctors and nurses. That's what my dad believed. That's what saved Margaret that night. And that's what saved me. Margaret sat in the front row, a cane in her lap, tears in her eyes. Her memory came and went, but she remembered Caleb. She always remembered Caleb. "Kindness doesn't end," Caleb said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "It moves from one person to another, making the world a little better each time." The crowd erupted into a standing ovation, and somewhere in the back of the room, a janitor put down his broom, wiping his eyes. because they all knew Caleb's choice that night didn't just save one woman. It lit a fire that was changing an entire system. Now I want to know, what would you have done at that bus stop? Would you have walked by, or would you have stopped like Caleb did? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share a story about a time kindness changed your life, or a moment you wish you'd spoken up. Hit like, subscribe, and let's keep building a world where compassion isn't rare, it's the standard.